Once upon a time in the land of Canaan, there lived a man named Jacob, who had 12 sons. His favorite was Joseph, born to him in his old age by Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife. Joseph showed great wisdom and understanding from a young age, far beyond his years. Jacob loved him deeply, and as a token of his affection, he gave Joseph a coat of many colors, marking him as special among his brothers. Joseph's brothers, however, grew jealous of him. Their envy only deepened when Joseph shared dreams that seemed to foretell his future greatness. In one dream, Joseph saw himself and his brothers binding sheaves in a field. His sheaf rose and stood upright, while the sheaves of his brothers gathered around and bowed down to it. In another dream, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. Fueled by jealousy, Joseph's brothers plotted against him. One day, when they were tending their father's flocks far from home, they seized Joseph and threw him into a pit. Initially intending to kill him, they relented and instead sold him as a slave to a passing caravan bound for Egypt. They dipped his coat in animal blood and presented it to their father Jacob, leading him to believe that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Despite his servitude, Joseph found favor with Potiphar, who soon put him in charge of his household. However, Joseph faced another trial when Potiphar's wife falsely accused him of misconduct and had him thrown into prison. Even in prison, Joseph's abilities did not go unnoticed. He interpreted dreams for fellow prisoners, accurately foretelling their fates. Years passed until Pharaoh himself had troubling dreams that none of his wise men could interpret. It was then that the cupbearer, whom Joseph had helped in prison, remembered Joseph's gift of dream interpretation. Summoned from the dungeon, Joseph stood before Pharaoh. Through divine inspiration, Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams as foretelling 7 years of abundant harvests, followed by 7 years of severe famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh appointed him as second in command over all Egypt, tasked with overseeing preparations for the impending famine. During the years of plenty, Joseph supervised the collection and storage of grain throughout Egypt. When the famine struck, Egypt was prepared while neighboring lands suffered. Jacob, in Canaan, sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain, unaware that among those who now held power was his long-lost son Joseph. Recognizing his brothers when they came before him, Joseph concealed his identity at first, testing their character and assessing whether they had changed from the jealous youths who had betrayed him years ago. Eventually, overcome with emotion, Joseph revealed himself to his astonished brothers, forgiving them and reassuring them of God's plan in all that had transpired. Joseph sent for his father Jacob and all their household to live in Egypt, where they would be provided for during the remainder of the famine. Jacob reunited with his beloved son Joseph, who had risen from being a despised slave to becoming the second most powerful man in Egypt, entrusted with saving countless lives and fulfilling the dreams foretold years before. Thus, Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace exemplifies resilience, forgiveness, and the providence of God in the face of adversity. I pray for you today that just as Joseph rose to prominence, that God will lift you up from that level of sorrow and disappointment to a place of great blessings and fulfillment.